Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay at home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight. Got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet. Cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. The mood is slightly heavy today, as it is in May and mental health awareness, and there's been a lot going on. I know we've been out of sorts for the past couple of weeks. I did get to go on a vacation for a week with my wife, which
Right.
uh, was enjoyable. We had a lot of fun, but then we were uh, ice bucket challenged right back into reality with just a bunch of life things. So, mental health awareness, yeah, it's right there, smack in the face. Yeah, yeah, that's where we're at, Danny.
I won't say that it's in any way my favorite month, but
Mm.
I think it is the most important month for me. I love to talk about the things that hit you when you came home. I'm not going to push, I'm not going to pressure, but I really think they work really well into mental health awareness.
Yeah,
As we
no,
were
definitely.
talking about before the show, mental health comes down to how you're handling your stress, whatever stress that might be. It doesn't have to be, like you don't have to have ADHD and PTSD and a bunch of other letters behind your diagnosis. It can just be this has been a heck of a week and this happened. I think it's very appropriate. I will say for me, May is a garbage month because honestly, because Mother's Day and I miss my mom a lot. And then today is actually my mom's birthday. And, the 2 days have always been very, very close. And it just feels like a double whammy for me. But I want to say that the important thing to consider is what I'm feeling and what I'm being stressed by and what you're feeling, what you're being stressed by are both just as valid as the other. Because I think a big part of mental health awareness is understanding that things affect people differently, especially when it comes to grief or when it comes to very, very stressful situations like you're in. It's very important to understand that this will affect you, and that's the important part is you're affected, and you need to figure out a way to get through that or deal with it without
Yeah.
swallowing it and bearing it.
No, well, and I mean, honestly, that's the thing that's um, going on with just trying to process everything. It was nice to jump on the dad lounge on Monday and talk with a
Hmm.
few of the guys and
Yeah, it's good to see you.
share what was going on. But I mean, the short of it all is that uh, we we got back from our ship, or we got off the ship back from our trip, and was immediately called by my 12-year-old to say that my mom had had a traumatic and very serious fall down the stairs of our basement. And come to find out, she had to have spinal cord surgery, and it was severe. And so basically, my mom probably is going to have to learn how to walk again at the age of 66, which is it's its own challenges.
Hmm.
But trying to support my mom and my dad who do not live in this city, and that's another tough thing for them, tough for my siblings, especially talking to my sister. Like, all she wants is for her to for my mom to come back up where they're at, and I'm like, she's not getting transferred back home anytime soon. Like, she
Hmm.
everything she needs is right down here. So it's just been rough. And then to make it a double whammy, Hezekiah's condition, he's not dealing well with the stress of it. He was the uh, oldest on scene first to the whole situation. And I will say this for any parents who, are ever wondering how your kids would react in an emergency type situation. If you take the time to teach and really like instill in your kids like just the procedure for coming up on an emergency, asking about calling for 911, and especially in your own home, knowing your home address because the other people that might get involved might not know it right offhand. My kids immediately when the neighbor came over and asked like, "What's the address here?" Because she didn't know.
Yeah.
Both of my kids rattled it off immediately without any hesitation, and that's the difference between getting an emergency unit quicker.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah, so just all that, and then I'm so thankful that Corey has a background in psychology because we've been able to sit down with the kids and really just kind of give them all of the space that they need to verbalize what's going on. But it's a long road for them in some ways. It's an
Hmm.
even longer road for my mom for recovery. But in the end, and for those that um, have any understanding of faith and prayer and stuff, like there is a lot of prayer being being said and a lot of work being done that's helping her to be where she's at now. She's got mobility in her
Hmm.
extremities. She's progressed quite a bit just in the past few days, but it's tough. I explained to the kids, I'm like, grandpa's best friend was severely injured.
Yeah.
Could have maybe not be here, possibly depending on the situation. And just telling them like, your guys' fast actions is a big part of what saved her. And then on top of that too, like just giving my dad the ability to have conversations. When you got a 60-year-old dad who has never really been one to be open about his emotions,
Yeah.
and him processing everything is the most traumatic thing that they've ever dealt with in their 40 some years of marriage. So
Hmm.
it's a lot. But yeah, mental health for me, I guess, in a way, has been just connecting with other dads and talking about it, just letting people know about it. But on top of that too, like trying to figure out ways to do things with my family. So like tonight we're going to a Reds game because that's something that we love to do as a family. So that'll be hopefully a good time. And yeah, I we just it's so wild. Like I really didn't want to I almost canceled to record today because I'm just like, okay, how do I do this? But at the same time too, it's like you got to get back to a regular routine or else it's just going to kind of put you in a corner
Yeah.
and not let you out.
Yeah. When you're ready, and if you're ready, that's great. And if
Yeah.
you weren't ready, I think everyone would understand. I know I
Yeah.
would. Um, Again, this is a very traumatic situation for everybody involved. But I do love that you have worked to prepare your kids, not necessarily for that specific emergency, obviously, but giving them the tools they need to learn to remain calm during the situation, but then also how to process it afterward. You know, how to
Yeah.
look at what they felt and what happened to them and what that stress did to them, and how to find to regulate yourself after
Yeah.
after it's been unbalanced by something like that. I think that's all awesome. I think that's
Yeah.
great.
Well, you know
It's
how
a
like
horrible situation, but
yeah.
your response has been great.
Well, you know how like we've talked before about Hezekiah with his autoimmune disorder. Like he doesn't have that cortisol hormone that gives you that fight or flight or whatever. When he texted us to tell us what was going on, his message was breaking news. Grandma fell down the stairs. Like, yep, that's a
It's
12-year-old for you. Wow. Okay. I would be like
Yep.
sports at 11. Like I don't know. Like I was just like those were his words verbatim. I showed it to Corey and she's like, "Gosh, I hope he's joking." And I'm like, "I don't think he is. I just think that something serious has happened." And sure enough, it had. So,
Yeah.
but
It
yeah,
just bounced
that's
off of him.
so that was the one thing I was just like I look back on it. I'm like, wow, okay, that's how that works with kids giving you information. in that sort of limelight. I mean, I am very thankful the fact that he was pretty level-headed. I mean, he has been affected by it definitely, but um, like the all the emergency team, they were just like praising the kids for
Hmm.
everything that they did. I mean, my kids ran out of the house to go get a neighbor
Yeah.
because that was like when my mom was like, "Go get help."
Yeah.
So not call 911, just go get help. I'm
Go
like,
get help.
Mom, what in the world?
Yep.
So that's its own other little bit of things, but yeah, the more we talk about it, it really helps, honestly. And that's the
Hmm.
thing I think we talk about a lot of times is not bottling it up and just being able to share with other people, and that's really been um, probably the biggest bit of medicine for me to help get through this so far.
Yeah. And it is, I think, like we've talked about, that's what human beings need. Sometimes you just need one person just to just drop all this stuff on. And I think
Yeah,
that's great. And I'm glad that you have it both, here with me, I think, but also with the Dad Lounge, especially
yeah.
reaching out to our community. That's I think one of our strongest things is our community. So I'm glad it helped you,
Yeah,
and we'll
definitely.
continue to do so because this is obviously something you're not done with.
No, we're probably months away from
Yeah.
getting through this just because of the situation. But yeah, you know, I think that too, just the the other part, I guess, that's been really big is the network that Corey and I have built over the 20 years of being down here,
Hmm.
being able to get a hold of people for different things has been another super helpful, like just different people that have come in. My dad was like, "Wow, like you have some really awesome friends down here that have some pretty interesting roles to be able to come in and be a part of this." So that's been another awesome just little thing to share with, just building that network, having those people like that was the
Hmm.
thing, like we know our neighbors around us really well. And so for the
Yeah.
kids to be able to find somebody that quickly, um, yeah, it, those are all, I think, sometimes overlooked elements of mental health and the fashion of
Hmm.
setting yourself up for a situation you hope you never have to deal with, and then but having it available when it does come to time.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
well, we're gonna have a guest on today.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to talk to Kiernan. I think that it'll be interesting to hear. He's going to share his story. Danny and I both haven't actually heard it all the way, so we're going to be getting it firsthand, just like everybody else listening. So that'll be just a good time to talk with him, and he's a pleasure to always speak with at a dad lounge all the time. So
Hmm.
it'll be fun to catch up with him. So we'll take a quick pause, and we'll bring Kieran in on here in just a second. Become a member of the National At Home Dad Network, an organization focused on providing advocacy, community, education, and support, connecting with households where dad is the primary caregiver of the children. We do this through our webinar and podcast series, mental health support groups, regular online social events, as well as our annual convention. The National At Home Dad Network is a 100% volunteer organization. Without the generous support of its members and the community around it, we would not be able to continue the work that we do. Becoming a member gives you access to past convention speaker presentations, the ability to vote for board members annually, and ensures that the organization's fees and bills are in positive standing. Oh yeah, it should not go unmentioned that there is some cool swag headed your way if you decide to become a member. For only $35 a year, your membership provides you with the exclusive content only we can generate, and you'll be supporting an organization that benefits families all around the country and world. By advocating for them, offering them community, providing education and guidance, and supporting them to grow in their parenthood journey. And one last thing, if you contribute $500 or more, you will become a lifetime member. Not only will you receive everything already mentioned, but also a certificate recognizing your status and an exclusive National At Home Dad Network Challenge coin with our trademark logo dads don't babysit. So, what are you waiting for? Become a member today. All right, and we are back. Hope everybody's ready for a great conversation. It will be a heavy one. I will say one of the trigger warnings for folks to just keep in mind is that we will be talking about suicide and suicide survival. So that's the main one, and we'll just kind of see where things go from there. So if that's something that's going to trigger you, you might want to not listen to this episode at this time. But with that, I want to welcome Kiernan Ocampo to the show and to talk about just his story that pertains heavily to this month's topic of mental health awareness. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you guys. Good to see you.
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, I usually only get to see you and talk to you in the dad lounge a lot of
In
times.
the dad
So,
lounge, yeah.
or if I get or I happen to see a notification that you're doing some Twitch DJing
Oh yeah.
from time to time.
I
But
appreciate that.
yeah, definitely, man. It's always good to have your music in the background while I'm doing stuff. So I'm all about that.
Cool, cool.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you on the show. Really thankful that you reached out to us, wanting to talk about just your story, and excited to just hear where you were and where you are. And I think these are the kind of stories that need to be shared more often because there are so many people that deal, in different realms of mental health, and just the fact that there is positive outcomes to be had. And I think a lot of times you get in your head space and you think that that's not possible. And being able to share stories like this are what show that it is possible. So,
Right.
um, yeah. So just to kind of get things rolling, uh, just want to talk about a little bit about who you are, and then we can kind of see where things progress from there for talking about what you want to share about.
Sure. I'm Kiernan Ocampo from New Jersey. I've lived in this area my whole life, with a brief stint out west. Um, I'm the third, the youngest of three boys, and I'm Asian background, Filipino. So, um, it's funny because looking at how things are now versus how things were when I was a kid, culturally, most people know there's a lot of pressure um, to do right, be perfect kind of thing. Um, and as a kid, you don't see it right away, and then you start to grow and realize, well, this isn't right, or that wasn't right, or, you know, I don't have to be that way and
Hmm.
still be accepted and loved in who I am. Um, so um, when I was uh, late teens, early 20s, um, fresh out of high school into college, kind of finding myself kind of thing, discovering who I am. Um, I still was dealing with not knowing who I was and trying to get out of being told how to feel, how to deal with things, and certain things don't matter because that's what I was told versus um, understanding what matters and how to deal with what matters. Um, and I found myself in uh, my first serious relationship, and um, towards the end of the relationship, there was a lot of mistrust and misunderstanding. And for me, mentally not knowing how to deal with everything, that stems with a first time relationship, being a young person, trying to find their way into adulthood and trying to understand life. Um, I didn't understand how to deal with the mental pressures, right? The stress of um, you don't belong here because somebody doesn't like this about you, or
Yeah.
um, you know, you need to be this certain way in order to be accepted by people that you feel or you're brought up to have them love you, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so never knowing how to deal with those kinds of things, it kind of spiraled, you know? Um, so like um, right before everything just kind of came crashing down, I was in a car accident with the uh the girl I was with at the time. Um, and it was very much better than it could have been, but also not what you want kind of thing, you know? Essentially, we were hit by a drunk driver. Um, and I was put on muscle relaxers. You know, that was the severity of my injuries. You know, there was, no broken bones. I was able to walk away. Um, but I wasn't checked. You know, I was on these muscle relaxers for a while. I wasn't checked to say, hey, you shouldn't be on them anymore. Or, um, you know, this is something that is temporary, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, um, at one point, I still had them and everything's crashing. And, um, I just remember one night I was gonna go find out what was happening, you know, and in the stress of it all, the thought had crossed my mind, well, if I can't make this work, I don't deserve to be here.
Mm.
You know, I'm giving my best. I'm doing my best to show everyone I can be this person. And I'm treating this other person the way I feel as though everyone should be treated. I'm giving my world to them to make them happy, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and ultimately, I ended up taking, at the time, I want to say it was close to 20, if I remember counting correctly, because it was a month's worth. So it's about 20 muscle relaxers.
Mm.
Um, no thought of, well, I'm going to do this and show them how much they hurt me. You know, no thought
Hmm.
of, um, I'll deal with it tomorrow. It was essentially, I can't deal with this. I don't want to deal with this. And I don't know where to go. So it's better for me not to be here because it's causing problems there. I'm causing problems here. Um, and then about a week later, um, maybe maybe 3 days later, I remember um, I remember being in the hospital. You know, there are a few steps in between there that I remember, but I just remember that I just remember things in short clips. You know, um, so when I look back on it, I feel like, okay, this is when the cause kicked in to the effect. And, you know, didn't know, oh, okay, maybe this wasn't a good idea. Um, so then I remember being in the psych ward for almost 2 weeks, about 2 weeks,
Hmm.
and having conversations with other people there. Um, and the perspective was, hey, listen, you're young. You know, you're lucky you're here. Um, and it wasn't like you'll be okay. Um it wasn't, you didn't do anything wrong. It was just, wow, you're here. You know, you're lucky you're here.
Hmm.
So then upon release from the psych ward, I had to meet with a therapist. And it was the first time I had ever thought about meeting with a therapist. Um Obviously, at this point, it wasn't by choice. I didn't know that that was a choice. Um, and it was very helpful meeting with my therapist. Met for, we would meet once a week for just about a year. And then I remember moving to about um, twice a month, so every other week. Um, but even before we got to that, there was a moment of doubt with the therapist. Like, what am I doing here? I don't need to be here. Like, you're not helping me. Um, but at the same time, I didn't know what help I needed.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're not helping me. Ultimately, I'm like, well, I don't feel better. I still have all these problems, and I'm here spending my time with this person versus fixing my problems. Um, and it didn't set in until the moment of my therapist telling me, "Hey, listen, you've made a lot of progress. You're doing so well that I feel like we can reduce our meetings." Um, when I heard that, I got so anxious,
Mm.
you know, because that's when it hit me that, oh, holy shit, this is working, and now they're pulling it away from me. Like, now what do I
Hmm.
do? You know?
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't know how much I needed it even to be at that point. Um, on the one hand, it felt good for them to say, hey, let's pull back a little bit. You start walking on your own 2 feet kind of thing. But then um, it dawned on me that, oh my gosh, like I have been doing things, I don't want to say wrong, but I've been doing them other people's way,
Hmm.
you know? And I learned that I got the tools from my therapist to recognize um, my own strengths and uh, my own characteristics that could carry me forward, that could keep me going.
Yeah.
But I also learned that it's it's not wrong, it's not bad to be there to see a therapist. It's
Hmm.
we because we ask people all the time for advice or suggestions on things that we don't know anything about. And hindsight is 2020 because when you're in your 20s, you feel like you know everything, just
Yeah.
kind of like my son. So my my 4-year old, but um
Yeah. It starts at 4, 3 or 4, and then
yeah,
just keeps going until you're, I
it
think, 30s. You start figuring out you don't know what you're talking about.
yes. Um and so from that point, it taught me, we talk about, superheroes, people have superhero like characters they identify with. Um, and I've said this to a few guys before in the dad lounge and in conversations. It taught me that my superpower and everyone's superpower, really, they just don't know it, kind of like the, the origin story, is self-awareness. You
Hmm.
know, you don't know how powerful self-awareness can be until somebody presents it to you. Because you feel like you're in a bad place or you feel like you're at your lowest and you don't know where to go. But you're also self-aware without thinking about it that you don't want to be there. You know you can be in a better place and you know that you're a better person than where you're at. And that's the superpower, being aware of I can do this. It doesn't have to be right now, even though I don't want to be here right now, but I can figure it out, and that's one of the first things I tell people when I hear that they feel like they're in a corner. They feel like they're at their lowest and they feel like they're on the edge and they have contemplated suicide. And I say, hey, listen, that's it's good that you could acknowledge that. Don't feel bad for acknowledging it because that is going to be your catalyst to pull you out. You
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
um, whenever they say, well, this, well, that, but this, but that, I say, hey, listen, my, you know, for me, that, my incident happened in my early 20s. Here I am 20 years later. It's a whole lifetime that I would have missed out on. You know, not to mention meeting my beautiful wife, having my beautiful son, meeting all these great dads, all these people that I've been able to call friends.
Hmm.
I would have never have had that opportunity, and that's to me, most people are afraid to fail. That's most people's biggest fear. I've learned to accept failure because of my incident.
Hmm.
Because if I didn't fail, I wouldn't be here,
Yep.
and that taught me it's okay to fail.
Hmm.
It's okay not to get it right and be perfect because coming out on the end is going to be better for you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that first. Um, I want to say that this is about you and your story, but I want to say something about mine because I think it links up very well with what you said. Um, the times that I am looking at harming myself or ending myself, it I realized through therapy that it's just something is going on in my life that is overwhelming me, and I want that to stop, whatever that might be. And sometimes it is my sense of low self worth. Sometimes it's this feeling that honestly, I'm a piece of shit. I feel that all the time, and reaching that point, it's been 6 years. 2019 was the last time that I actually tried. And every time since then, I've looked at it and said, wait, wait, wait. You don't want to end yourself. This isn't where you're at. You're overwhelmed by something. You need something to stop, whatever that might be. And sometimes it's just overstimulated by the world itself. Sometimes it's grief. Sometimes it's so many different things. But the realization of what you said was that you reached a point where, okay, if I can't do this, I just don't belong here. I shouldn't be here anymore. And that understanding of I have to be this, I have to be this, I have to make this succeed. And like you said, no, you don't. You can fail at this. It's okay. We all fail so many times at so many things, and I love the message of that, and the fact that it may feel like okay, this is it for me, but what is it around you that needs to change? And that's hard to see when you're in that moment, of course.
Mm.
But I think it's a very good point, and really set well with me, specifically because I have that same ideal. I look at it these days, and it hits me, and I'm just like, well, what's going on? Oh, you haven't had enough sleep. You've missed 3 nights of sleep in a row, and it's just you've hit a point, or whatever it might be. Um, and that my mind a lot of time defaults to, well, you just shouldn't be here. That's all there is to it. And understanding that, well, your brain is lying to you, of course, but that it's okay to hit that point and that you have tools in your toolbox, so to speak, which was another point you brought up, that your therapist gave you tools to look at it and say, this is how I need to deal with it, which I love that message. Therapy for me will save my life, literally, put me in a position that I can keep moving. And that therapists are someone that will come to you, like you said, and you don't know what you're doing. Like I need to fix my refrigerator. I don't know how to do that. Well, I either let somebody else do it for me, but let's say I need to learn. I call somebody, they teach me how to do it. They show me the tools I need. I'll go buy those tools. And next time the fridge breaks, I fix it. Right. And it's that exact same thing with therapy. And I love that you brought that up, Kiernan. That was
Yes,
fantastic.
thank you.
I
Sorry, go
yeah.
ahead, bro.
Sorry. I was just gonna say, I wish that I had uh the ability to have some sort of therapy when I went through my suicide journey because uh that was not like I had no way to communicate or like have conversation or communicate with my parents about what was really going on, to be able to get any like professional help. Um, but I think that just being able to have older people around to be able to talk to and just having that was a nice, like it was a safe space to have the
Yeah.
conversations and get that out there. And it wasn't a therapist, but it was better than nothing. Um, and so that I just kind of wanted to share that from just another perspective of
Mhm.
going through a hard time like what you guys are talking about.
Hmm.
No, you're right. Sometimes you don't need uh the professional ear. Sometimes you just need an ear.
Yeah,
Right.
You need a safe space to let it out, get it off your chest, because sometimes hearing it out loud makes you really process versus just the voices in your head saying, "Hey, what about this? What about that? Look at, you know."
Hmm.
And because then you get the opportunity to let it breathe, sit back and reflect and say, "Okay, that's not that's not me. That's not what I really want." I, you know,
Right.
and another thing, like right now, I actually need to follow up with my therapist because I early on, like I'm pretty sure like a lot of people early on in the lockdown, I did hit a point where I was like, okay, I need to see a therapist. I need to, you know, figure out how to process everything, how to deal with everything. Um, and then she also said to me, "Hey, listen, we're at a point where I think you can take a step back. We don't need to meet as much, you know." Um, and and then, you know, insurance has changed and then that kind of got messed up. But I still have her contact info and she says, listen, here, if you ever need it, here's my number, here's how to get a hold of me. And I feel like that's really important to tell people. Like therapy, it doesn't have to be bad.
Hmm.
Therapy is a great resource and a great tool to help you through what you might feel as though is insignificant or minor or something that you don't even know you need to deal with. You know, you might have pushed it down so far or blocked it out so much that you just keep going and you're not even realizing that it's tied to something else, until one day it just comes back and all of a sudden you're like, where is this coming from? Why am I feeling like this? You know, and um, knowing that you can reach out to someone and it doesn't have to be, you know, once a day or once a week or, you know, twice a month kind of thing, but just knowing that you have that there,
Yeah.
it will help you so much more in the long run.
yeah. I will say too, kind of going from like a talking to therapists on a Zoom call or whatever. Like my first interaction with like a professional therapist was actually just before COVID hit.
Oh,
And like we were meeting in person for like the first month, doing like I think we were doing like once a week or something like that. And then like COVID shut everything down. And man, it was a hurdle to get over to be meeting just like in a video chat. It just didn't feel the same. Like I didn't feel like there was a connection there.
yeah.
It was really, really hard. And I would get off of the call afterwards, and my wife would be like, "How did it go?" And I'm like, "It was horrible." Like it just was. And she spent time talking to me about like, well, how can we make it better? What can we do? That kind of thing. And um, I think one of the things that really helped was launching the Dad Lounge, because that hadn't been launched yet. And so like getting used to being on a video call to have deeper conversations. I mean, I had been doing a podcast where I was talking to guys one on one, but it just didn't have it wasn't the same feeling.
Yeah.
Um, and so like having a place like the Dad Lounge where it's like, all right, this is a safe place to like talk and share with other guys who are going to be able to understand what's going on. like it kind of helped with being able to then go back to the therapist and have conversations that it just didn't seem so awkward, I guess. But I think sometimes that's difficult. People I think have a hard time. Like, I don't want to do video chat if they can't get, to a therapist physically. But I think it's one of those things where it's just a changing of how you're looking at it to be able
Hmm.
to go through it, is what I basically wanted to to just kind of share about that, because it was rough, but I made it through it, and it was definitely super beneficial, and I got some great resources and tools out of it to be able to get to a more positive space. And during COVID, that was I think
Yeah.
we were all trying to get to a positive
Hmm.
space, so
Yeah.
came out on the other side for that.
And it really speaks to our understanding of, again, self-awareness, emotional self-awareness, and the ability to talk about what we're feeling and how restricted that is for many of us, because going to a therapist is difficult, but you go and face to face and you're able to let down your guard, you take off your armor and let them see you vulnerable. And that's okay. Doing it on a video call, though, is so much more difficult because we don't know who's in that room with them, even if we know there's nobody in there, but still you can't see the room they're in. So it's kind of difficult to let yourself be vulnerable. And then you don't know who's going to walk into your room.
Yeah.
Oh, you could just do it at home. And I'm like, that's great for a doctor for my elbow or something, or my body is fine. If I need to talk to my doctor, I would happily schedule telehealth appointments almost every time. Going to the hospital or the clinic to see my doctor gives me anxiety like crazy. But it's different for most people where they would go for a physical exam with no problem. Going in and talking to a therapist is so much more difficult because of that vulnerability. And I feel like a lot of that comes from our not speaking about that vulnerability, our not
Mhm.
talking like we are right now, our being unwilling or unable to just say to someone else, yeah, man, my therapist told me this the other day and blah blah blah, or just simply saying, I'm depressed today. I don't know what's going on. It's, my allergies give me depression, or my, whatever it might be. And that movement that we're seeing across the board. The Dad Lounge is a great example. We also have the actual, the support groups for the organization that are put on, and those times are places where you can go to somebody that you can trust. And once someone shares their story, you're more than willing to share yours. You're looking at it going, oh, yeah, these are the similarities. This is what I felt. This is how it was affecting me. And this is what I feel. And it's an amazing, just almost eruption of vulnerability and emotion that I feel like we desperately need, but we can't find a lot of times. And I love that the Dad Lounge offers that to so many people. Just,
Mhm.
it's fantastic.
Yeah, so I will say real quick that um, when I found the Dad Lounge, it was it was like my oh my gosh moment of hey, I've arrived. I'm with my people, you
Yes.
know, and that's just on the surface level, The more you get to hang out with people, you get to know people. Even, you know, some guys have come and gone. Some guys have come in once and haven't come back since, which, if you watch this, hey, come back. You know,
Hmm.
we love to have you there. But you know, it's it is something to be said about the community, you know, with of not having to worry about, you know, you could talk about whatever happened throughout your day, and not have to worry about, well, they're gonna judge me because of how I handled that situation.
Right.
As opposed to, and because, this has happened, somebody talked about a situation, they felt like they were being judged, and, just like, hey, listen, we get where you're coming from. You're not being judged. We're also here to offer a perspective. Like, if you
Hmm.
feel some type of way about how you handle it, at least you're aware of, maybe I could have handled it differently. You're just not aware of how different you could have handled it,
Yeah.
and when we have those kinds of discussions in the lounge, it's like, oh, okay, now everybody can walk away with a different perspective, a little bit more information of
Hmm.
how I can approach something similar next time. Um, and and that's very helpful, just to have that other perspective.
Hmm.
So, and that's why I tell people, don't feel like, because I know when I first got to the lounge, and you guys have talked about this before, I've sat there with my hand on the mouse, like, okay, do I click join? Do I really want to click join? Or like, what's the worst could happen, you know?
Yeah.
And um, sometimes we hold ourselves back without knowing it. So being aware, having the headspace, having the conversations, or even having a therapist to help you navigate that, it's it's all good and useful. You know,
Hmm.
Yeah.
don't ever feel like don't ever feel like, oh man, the negative thoughts, the voices in my head, and my negative perspective may be winning, but there's always the other side that you may not see until somebody presents it to you. And that's okay as long as you're not in the cycle and being stuck with just those thoughts and no way out. You know, it's okay to look for a way out. Um it's okay to have the support group and have the conversations, because
Hmm.
it is kind of surprising how 20 years later some people, I would probably say maybe a little bit older generations, still kind of look at therapy as a negative.
Yeah.
And it's almost just as comforting to hear people now, my age and younger, just throw out the word therapist as if it's, like the ice cream man,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
So, because
Right.
think about that. I can tell you, oh, the ice cream truck is coming around, and all of a sudden everyone lights up.
Hmm.
Well, if I said, I have therapy coming up, does that make you light up and say, "Oh, he gets it. You know what I mean?" Like that to
Right.
me,
Yes, I
it
do.
should be kind of that same thought
Hmm.
process. And I still meet people and talk to people now my age or our age that have a tough time thinking about therapy and thinking about going to a therapist.
Yeah.
And it, don't go to the therapist. See a
Right.
therapist,
Just do it.
just do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that the whole breaking the stigma of going to see a therapist is it I, it's interesting. It's almost like chiseling away at an iceberg in some ways, because you think that, oh yeah, we've progressed so far in this, and it's like there's so much more to be done with the
Mhm.
conversation and with just accessibility and
Yeah.
just just the comfortability of, yeah, I need to go talk to this person.
Mhm.
We have enough pushback, I feel, as men on our physical health. When you're taking care of yourself physically, you're still there's this stigma about it. We talk about, especially with our work with Movember, about testicular cancer, about prostate cancer. Okay, those are very serious, obvious, common things that you should be tested for, and you shouldn't have any issue, and no one should give you any flack for it. This is a part of your life you need to check on. Excuse me. And the same comes to our mental health. And I love it, Kieran, because I see Generation Z and Generation Alpha are amazing with their mental health, with their emotional self-awareness, with knowing the words to what they're feeling
Yep.
and looking at it and saying, well, I think I'm actually, because of this, that I think I'm a little depressed right now. So I've been working on doing this and this. And these are, 10 and 12-year-old kids. And it's amazing because this is what I think we all need as a kid,
Mhm.
is the understanding of I am a whole person, the physical, the mental, spiritual, all those things come together. And I need someone to help me in all of those places to give me direction, you
Yep.
know? And I
100%.
love that because every time you tell your story, every time you say, I'm in therapy, or my therapist said, every time we bring those points out, we're touching the lives of other people who aren't there yet, but they can look at us and say, that's a competent, capable parent. I love this person. They do amazing stuff and they're going to therapy. So maybe I can go, you
Mhm.
know? because I'm not there, and I just didn't. Well, maybe that's why they're being a great, competent, capable parent, just
Yep,
because they went to therapy and
exactly. Yeah.
fixed their stuff.
Well, and I
But
think too with kids like you're talking about in that younger age bracket that are able to verbalize what's going on, it really comes down to how us as parents are having conversations with our kids because
mhm.
it's not like we're instilled with that vocabulary or that mindset of things. And I've noticed that just with talking with my oldest and everything, he's going through, it's like helping give him the words to be able to
Yes.
express what's going on. Like that's stuff I didn't grow up with, and I think a lot of us who are in our 40s and 50s are in that range where it's like, we had to learn it way later in life, like how to, be aware and verbalize and so for these younger kids, like you said, to be able to do that at this point, they're way ahead of the the
Hmm.
curve, and
Yep.
that's a great thing because hopefully that means that they're going to have a better adult life than we ourselves are having right now. Not that ours are awful in any kind of way, but you always want the best for your kids, and so to be able to set them up this early is huge.
Absolutely. Yep.
So,
So
Kieran, is there anything else about your story that you'd like to share, or just kind of
Um,
wanted to give you
it
that time before we end up the show?
just ultimately, you know, it anxiety and depression, if you deal with it, it's the it's important to acknowledge it and understand how to deal with it. You know, some people are afraid of acknowledging it before they can consider dealing with it.
yeah.
I still deal with depression and anxiety. I just, specifically, I remember as a kid calling my mom up at work and saying, "Hey, listen, I don't want to go to school today." And then being drilled why. And all of a sudden you know, I didn't know it at the time, but I would get this empty space in my chest. I could,
Yes.
and I found out during therapy, holy crap, that's anxiety. I was so anxious I couldn't leave the house as a
Hmm.
kid.
Yeah.
And now I know, okay, take a step back. So it's okay if you're dealing with it, you may not know you're dealing with it. So it's okay to seek the help. So do it. That's the only thing I can say is, you don't know what you don't know. So
Hmm.
it's okay to find out. It's okay, you might do your research on other things. Maybe this thing should take priority.
Yeah, no,
Awesome.
definitely agree with that completely. Well, hey, Kieran, thanks so much for coming on the show and
Thank you
sharing your
guys.
story. Yeah, it is super powerful. Hopefully, it helps those listening and watching to have more perspective on just having the power to go and get help that they need. And with that, we will talk to you all next week. We'll have another guest on for our mental health month. And we're excited to just keep bringing on different folks to share their stories. So, till next week, y'all have a good one.
Good night, everybody.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.